It was December the 7th, the Bear of Light. The snow lay deep and heavy over the Star Valley, and dawn crept in like a careful thought. Inside the house everything was quiet, except of the soft crackle of the fireplace and the steady rhythm of Miss Sophie's breathing. She awoke with a start, not because something had woken her, but because she had dreamed a strange dream. She stood in a forest of stars, and someone was calling to her, not with words, but with light. When she opened her eyes, the key shimmered faintly, as though still carrying the echo of the dream. She sat up and looked at it. It was now barely half the size it had been when she first found it. The surface was dull, and tiny bubbles moved along its edge, as if something inside were alive. You keep changing, she whispered. What are you trying to tell me? It's listening, said a voice behind her. Vincent tiptoed over, carrying a steaming cup of tea, her head tilted slightly to one side. Ice remembers, Sophie. It carries every sound it's heard and every light it sees. It sings when it melts, but only for those brave enough to listen. Miss Sophie tilted her head. Does it sing to me, too? I hope so, said Wimsey with a grin. Otherwise, this will be a very quiet December. But beneath their laughter, they both felt something had changed. The house felt different, the air heavier, as if waiting of something unseen. Suddenly, the fireplace went out. The flame flickered, hissed, and vanished. The room plugged into a darkness so deep Miss Sophie could hear her own heartbeat. Bimse, I'm here, came the small voice, but it's not me doing this. The key glowed now, not as before. It not cold and clear, but warm, gentle, like a heartbeat under snow. A light unfolded from its center and spilled across the floor like golden water. In that light, shapes began to form, small echoes of memories from the house. Wilma laughing in the kitchen, a tiny puppy running through the hallway, a Christmas tree adorned with red ribbons and paper birds. Miss Sophie stood motionless. These are my memories, but hers too. Wimsey stepped closer. The light shows what the heart remembers. That's why you were chosen. You carry both her legacy and your own hope. The key's light grew stronger. A trail of golden shimmer stretches across the wall, and where it touches, a new door appears. It was made of dark wood, inlaid with small pieces of glass that glimmered like stars. Above it were written the words, "The Bearer of Light." It's time, said Wimsey. Miss Sophie nodded and stepped forward. The key slid into the lock with a sound like the song of melting ice. The door opened and blinking light poured through. They stepped inside. The space beyond was not a room but a landscape, vast and still. The ground beneath them was covered in crystals that sparkled like frost. and the air smelled of something ancient and pure, like snow on Christmas Eve. In the center stood a lamp, simple, almost ordinary, made of brass and glass, but inside flickered a small flame that cast no shadow. "It's that, the light of Christmas," whispered Miss Sofie. Wimsey shook her head. "No, it's yours." Miss Sofie approaches. The flame grew brighter, as though it recognized her. When she placed her paw on the base of the lamp, everything around them fell silent. "You are the bearer of light," said a voice, soft yet commanding. It came from nowhere and everywhere at once, from the light itself. "You must carry the flame where darkness fears to tread." Miss Sofie looked around. "But how? I'm just me," the voice answered. "No one is just themselves when the heart awakens." The light drew inward, folding like a spark, and then it flowed into the key. It glowed no longer as eyes, but as a tiny star. For a moment, the whole world was bathed in golden light, and Miss Sofie felt warmth rise within her chest, a warmth that came not from fire, but from something far deeper. Then the light faded. They were back in the hallway. The fireplace reignited on its own, and the flame dances gently, as though nothing had happened. But Miss Sofie knew something had changed. The key was smaller still, yet it pulsed faintly, as if now had a heart of its own. "Wimsey," she whispered, "I can feel it. The light lives here now." She placed a paw over her chest. Wimsey nodded, smiling softly. "Then you are ready for the next door." Miss Sofie looked out the window. The snow was falling thickly, but between the flakes glimmered threads of golden light, as though the world itself was answering her. She sighed contentedly, curled back into her donut, and let the key rest against her fur. The flame from the fireplace painted the walls with a warm glow, and for the first time in many days she felt no cold, only peace. Outside, however, something stirred, a shadow not yet gone, waiting patiently. Its eyes gleamed, and its whisper was only a breath in the wind. "The light burns brightest just before the dark returns." But Miss Sofie was already asleep. Her tail flickered softly in dreamland, and within her chest the light beat steady and true. That was the end of the 7th of December. Come back tomorrow and hear about time mills if you dare. Merry Christmas.